Welcome back to stage 2 of the Little Guy Racing R-Factor build. And if you have seen stage 1, you'll remember we got a little roadblocked in getting a proper stage 1 completed here. You can see the chassis is fairly empty on the inside. So ran into a few problems, one of those being a warped cage, the other being a mismachined transmission housing. So luckily, Little Guy was great about replacing these. They got the parts out to me in probably a week or so. But as life goes, I'm just now getting around to finishing this guy out. So I think today's the day we try to make a little bit more progress on this and work towards finishing out this R-Factor. Let's do a quick review on what the issue was in stage 1. So cage-wise, let's take a look at it here. You can see on this right-hand side where I'm holding it how warped in it is at the bottom. So it's just totally misshapen. The back is kicked up. So not sure what happened to this. Most likely this got warped somehow after manufacturing. But this is very stiff as far as the cage. So it couldn't really work and be force fit. It was really wonky. And the panels that fit on there, all the body panels, are very precise and they're very thin, so you don't want any stress on them. So ultimately, the solution was just to get in touch with them to get a new cage, and they were great and sent me out a brand new package here with a straight cage. I haven't gotten it out, but I've inspected it visually. It looks great. Everything looks square. So that is going to solve that issue. And then as far as this little transmission of theirs, it ended up being the center black spacer, and you can see the gap there. So the problem was when you tighten this down, it bound up the gears. So when I got calipers out and investigated this for them, I took some measurements. It ends up it's thinner at one point and it's thicker at another point. So this guy was just mismachined. So again, they were super helpful. Sent me out that piece and I guess a brand new plate here that I don't think I need, but I've got that spacer piece now to move forward so we can get a transmission and motor mounted up. And while I was on their site, I went ahead and picked up their link riser. Figured might as well go all Little Guy since the ramp crab that is on there. Let me grab this guy. Because of the geometry, it's going to come up so close to this tray, basically rest on it, not able to use the adjustable link riser that this is so handy for. So there's no need to use it in this application. I'll just use a non-riser version. So figured I'd do a little swap out for a full kind of Little Guy branding on the axles. But anyways, I think now that we've got the correct pieces, I think we'll jump into the transmission motor assembly, get that all assembled, mounted, and then we can start in on some testing. All right, just a quick look here. I pulled this new set out of the package, and there is a little difference here in these plates. So you can see this one has the kind of shroud shield where this guy does not. So not sure what the deal is. So it gives you a little more clearance here, I guess, for maybe a larger, I guess that'd be covering your spur. So not sure if I need this one or not. I'll maybe mock this up here in a second. But here's the old piece versus the new piece, and you can see easily that this one on the left is thin at the bottom. So anyways, it's very obvious now when you got two of them to hold up, but it was a mystery before I got those calipers out. So I think I'm gonna get a little udder butter in these metal gears, just a tad there to maybe quiet them down, and then get this guy assembled, and we'll look at the motor. Well, I don't know if Little Guy is messing with me or I just have really bad luck, but so far I wouldn't recommend this transmission to anybody. Still having a lot of problem getting it not to bind. So it screws in from both sides. So there's a lot of screws, a lot of pieces to it, and tightening down one side to the center is how you do it, this outer plate. And then you can see there's kind of a screw here that's hidden. So that has to go on before this motor plate. So there's one that you put on to kind of secure this side of the transmission, and then you put the motor plate on, and then you've got the 4 more. But with those tightened down and not just killer cranked, but just tightened snug like you would, I was getting some grinding. And you can see it's finally kind of nice and smooth. Got some grease in there. So what I had to do basically was assemble it, but then back out every screw and just barely bring them in until it was nice and smooth. And then I went one by one and put some of this purple kind of removable thread locker on there, low strength, and did one at a time and made sure I could free spin. But definitely not excited about this transmission. It won't be on my list of one to buy again. I don't know what the deal is. I don't know if I just got a bunk one, but it almost seems like that spacer is still giving me a little bit of issue. The outer motor plate, there was really no difference except for the spur gear cover that other one doesn't have. So anyways, some progress here, but some frustration and a lot of time wasted. So you can see I've got my spur gear, I've got my NanoBam, I guess this is the 2.0, it's got the new logo font on it. And then you're gonna have to provide your own screws to mount your motor and washer if you order kind of a separate motor from a mount. So I've dug these out of some spares I had. So I'm gonna get this mounted up, make sure it's still free spinning, and then we'll get it mounted and we can actually test this guy, see how it does in the real world. A little update here. So things have been going a little bit smoother, getting the motor installed. So chose to come out the side here. We'll see, that may change. The option, keeping it low, was basically tucked up right against the drive shaft. That's not gonna work. Looked like it could come out here pretty easily, but again, you know, you've got something spinning on that side, so chose that for now. But let's take a look at this mesh. So let's see if it'll focus here. So we've got just a little wiggle there from the spur to the pinion, but we're nice and smooth. So everything looks good with the transmission. So we'll get it mounted in and see if it's still just as smooth. Moving right along here, you can see I got the transmission motor installed, went ahead and swapped in the Lgrp upper link mount. And surprisingly, I had to use the double-sided tape shim method even on their own diff cover there. So that's kind of odd. You think their parts would fit their axles perfectly, but that's not the case. There's still that little wiggle if you don't put a little shim in there. And then I kind of got ahead of myself. As you can see, I've got one drive shaft for the rear installed. I've got the other one sitting here. These are both the same drive shaft, same length, front and rear, so it doesn't really matter. But I decided to stop and go ahead and test this motor before I get the other drive shaft installed, just in case there's some issues. It feels like it's still nice and smooth installed on the skid plate. So I've got the electronics we're going to use here, which is this FS2A 4-channel for the FlySky GT5 radio. So this is going to be number 20 on this radio, so it is full now. And then I've got Mofo RC's Rockwolf 32-bit ESC, which is a really nice little ESC. It is programmed and tuned right out of the box for this NanoBam motor of his, so it works perfect in combination. It does come with a little program card in case you want to switch it to brushed. And one thing you do need to do is set the low voltage cutoff. So I've already plugged that in with a USB-C and done that on the computer through the interface. So we are ready to plug up and test. I've got a channel set here, so we'll get the radio on, and then let me get this plugged in and we'll spin this guy. I guess I need to bind it, so we hold down the bind button. Guess I'm gonna turn this radio off. So it's a whole big process here. Not really. Let's hold the bind button, let's turn it on. So we're fast flashing in bind mode. So on the radio, I need to hold the bind button as I turn it on, and we are good to go. So we should have the slow flash, and we do. So you can see we are bound up. So I'm gonna turn this off. I'm gonna turn this off, and then let's just do it as normal. Radio on, there we go. Look at that. We have motion. Nice and smooth and quiet. Doesn't look like any issues. Nice and smooth forward and reverse. So looks like I've got that transmission worked out. So it looks like we've got the nice slow control creep. And you've got plenty of power there. Servo's not hooked up to the arm, but we've got power. It is working, so we'll take care of that here in a little bit. But for now, looks like I'm good to go to get the front drive shaft in and move on. One thing I went ahead and did was add thread locker to all the rear components. Well, I had the axle kind of flopped off because all of this stuff is metal and I didn't get to any of that in round one. So I think I'm gonna attack that in the front as well. This purple is really nice because it's a low strength. So it's great for working on these little micros where you don't need a lot of holding power. You just need it not to rattle loose. But a lot of times the blue thread locker is, you got to put heat on it to get it off. Sometimes it's just too much. But anyways, good stuff right here. Figured we'd take a little break from electronics and chassis and actually look at this cage and get into some of these body parts. I think I'm going to have to figure some of this out to kind of figure out how I'm going to do the electronics and batteries. So I did have a little opportunity to do some painting, as you can see. So I've got these panels primed, and then I hit them with this AS12 bare metal silver. So this is from the aircraft line, so it's for a hard plastic as well. And then I think I hit those with the semi-gloss clear to seal them rather than a flat, just to get a little more sheen. But definitely wanted to hit them on both sides, just since this thing is a cage and you're probably going to see all sides of it. Some of these are symmetrical, so I wasn't sure, which side I was going to use. So wanted to make sure and have either ready, but looks pretty good. I didn't really know the body color yet, so I figured a bare metal silver would be a good base for the kind of buggy chassis underneath. Went ahead and hit the radiator with that as well, and then used a little bit of panel liner to infill that. And then we're prepped for the fans on the other side. Got the seats sprayed with just a little spare gray I had left over. I forget exactly what shade that is, but again, pretty neutral, not knowing what the actual LEXAN body is gonna be. But I think we're ready to start assembly on this guy. And I've got a little pin vise here, just in case I need to clean out any of these little holes here so you don't split this plastic. These panels are very thin, but the good news is the cage drops right on here. I mean, just perfect. Even got the little bumper nose piece sat on there, but just a great fit. Fits the sliders, just drops right on. So exactly what I needed for this build to continue. So I think now I'm gonna start seeing if I can't get some of this put together and start sizing up what this thing's gonna look like. Thought I would share in a little bit of the progress here, and man, this thing is looking super sick. Obviously the roof is not screwed on. Got the back assembled here, and I've got a few notes in doing that. So the first being, install this guy first, this plate. Before you get the radiator in, before you get the seats in, I did not. I had to take those items out to get that guy in there. And once you get that in, seats and radiator can go in. And speaking of seats, they ask you to use these tiny little 1.2 coarse threads to secure the seat frame to the actual cage. And you can see there, I swapped up to some 1.4, I think by 5 millimeter, because it's a super thick bracket. And those little 1.2s had about 1 millimeter of engagement, so super weak. They work fine for the body panels, And one note on those body panels, I said earlier, I didn't know which side I was gonna use, but they actually do have kind of an outer face, and you can see the holes are kind of a little bit wider on one side of the punch, and they're a little narrower. So I think that allows for the screw head to kind of seat in there a little more flush on you know, all these panels. And I think I actually put this one in wrong, upside down, versus all of these that you can't, you know, there's no chance of flipping these panels. And I noticed these set in really nice, and I was able to kind of unscrew these and screw them back in a couple times, and they got seated in much more flush. But overall, it's going really well thus far. Obviously, I don't have the cage attached. The hood just snaps in, so that is removable. And you attach the cage to the chassis from the bottom, so that's no problem. And then you can get to these 2 points from the top in the front. So I think I'm going to keep going with the body panels and see where we end up here. Still have no idea how I'm gonna access a battery, but maybe once I get it all assembled, set on there, and kind of get more of a vision of it. But so far, man, this thing is just looking super cool. Really happy with it. And man, it really doesn't resemble an SCX24 at all. Now that's starting to look like something. So I got the last 2 panels on, and they came out really nice. You can see really nice panel lines there, very tight gaps. The largest gap is probably this side at the hood, but like I say, the hood clips on. I think the hood was just a little warped, so maybe it'll settle down over time and tighten that gap up. But overall, really happy with the fit and finish of everything. Very precise. The radiator detail or intercooler came out really nice. You can kind of see through there behind the seats. The only little issue I had with actually dropping the cage onto the chassis as far as fitment was right up here at the front. So I've got this aluminum bumper extension, which was an upgrade piece I purchased separately from the kit. It comes with this 3D printed piece, and you can see these kind of large holes here. So these key into some kind of half spheres on the bottom of the cage here that are just alignment pegs. So those guys were a little too large, would not allow the cage to drop down flush, as you see here. And it has to be flush because it aligns, it'll screw in right here with the bumper extension. But just took a little bit of elbow grease and sandpaper to take a little height and a little diameter off of those little half spheres, and that got the cage seated nicely. Another tip would be definitely use a pin vise on all the 1.4 connections of the cage to the 3D kind of back and the sliders. All of those holes were a little bit too small, and just take your time, go slow, don't force anything, don't over tighten. Definitely watch your screw as you're screwing it in, especially these guys. Make sure everything is going in straight, but not hard at all. Just take your time. But man, it is worth it. This thing really doesn't even need a LEXAN body. This thing is looking so good. But you know, something that would make it look even better if we got some wheels and tires on this thing. So I think that is the next step. We'll take a little bit of break from the cage and electronics. It'll give me a little more time to ponder the install, and we'll actually get some wheels and tires on here, because when I take the cage off for the install of the electronics, I think that will be the opportune time to look at limiting. And we'll definitely need some wheels and tires on there for that. But man, so far so good. I am super stoked about this. All right, we've got some goodies here. So some new items for me, some pretty new items to the market. So we've got the black labels from Little Guy Racing. So these are nice chunky mud terrains. I think these are about a 62 millimeter. And then we've got their beautiful bronze ghost wheels that I've been itching to use for quite some time. And then over here, these bright yellow-green items, these are new silicone inserts from Injora. These are soft and super soft, and those are in the 62 millimeter diameter, so those should work well with the black labels. So let's pop these out, get a closer look, and get these guys installed. I get starting with these Little Guy black label tires. So these are just super soft, sticky. They remind me of the RC 4-wheel drive X2 S3 compound. But I've heard nothing but good things about these. Excited to see how they actually perform, but they look and they feel great, and they come with a really nice feeling foam. I think it would work really well with these if we didn't have the inserts. Of course, I think if you had a heavy rig, it still might crush these. So that's something to think about. These are very, very pliable tires. But moving on, let's take a closer look at these little guy Ghost wheels. These guys are just beautiful, just super high quality, precision machining as always. These are like a 0 or a positive offset, so they're gonna sit nice and tucked in over the knuckle. So no steering scrub. Got the vented ring. They've actually got notches to allow for venting on the wheel, but because of these inserts, they can block that vent on the ring. So I'm gonna punch the tires as well. They can actually block the tire holes as well. So it's good to just have both of them vented. But I've got 2 mounted up here. So the green, nice softness here, and then the yellow, even better in the front. So that's about the same amount of pressure there on those. But sidewall, they feel about equal as far as being supportive, and very, very supportive there, but a little bit of give because they're silicone and not printed. But so far, I'm liking this setup. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these washed, punched, and mounted up, and we'll see what 4 of these guys look like. Let's take a look at these all mounted up. I gotta say, I'm really digging the silver gold color combo. I think these look really classic. Loving the look of this thing overall. The cage, definitely need a little detail added to that winch to pop it, but man, these wheels and tires look super good. So let's check out the clearances here. Let's get this guy at full lock. So we're definitely into this that lower link, but I think we've got plenty of cage body clearance. Gonna be touching that shock, so that may have to get backed off just a little bit. Let's flip it over here at full lock. You can see that tire is into that lower link, but that's just what happens when you start getting this crazy with your steering. But man, just awesome. Great fit with this size tires, of course, because it's designed around little guy tires. So perfect clearances to the body and the fender, just like the Ripper. Look at that, just perfect cut. So that is just great. I think this was a great combo to use their tires, their wheels, at least for this first setup. You know there's gonna be some alternates and wild cards coming, but I think for now, I'm gonna hold off on doing any more wheels and tires until I get the body painted up, get that coloration set and that design, and that may inform the next 2 sets of wheels. But I think I've got some picked out. I've got some tires in mind about this size, so gonna have some definitely cool options coming later on down the road. But I think now it's time to look at maybe seeing if we can get this ride height down to something a little more appropriate here. Let's see this guy full sprung here. Look at that, that's crazy. But the articulation is just nuts on this thing. Look at that. Just awesome. So super excited. So let's keep this guy rolling. Progress, progress, progress. So this guy is sitting super slammed. So obviously I did a little suspension limiting. So that means the cage came off. So that means electronics got installed, and I've got some batteries charged, ready to go. So let's take a quick look at that process, and then we'll pull this cage off and take a look inside and get to a little testing. And voila, we've got electronics installed. So as you saw, wasn't too hard, just took a little bit of thought on how I was gonna do it. And the first piece of the puzzle was figuring out a battery that would fit, a battery that I could actually get in and out of this thing. Most of the builds I've seen of an R Factor, which are few, people have built the batteries in because there's really no good access. They set you up with a front battery tray here, but because of the seats, they designed this for a forward-facing motor. And once you do that, you pretty much negate that whole tray. And the access with the hood off through here is still very limited because of the cage geometry. So I didn't really see how to get a stock little flat battery in there. So I started searching around with what I had, and I found this kind of linear 3S right here. This is a 250. And what I found was I could actually go up through the wheel well with the wheels on, with them clocked, and actually get this guy sitting right here on the slider. Then I can optionally kind of pick it up and move it forward into the battery tray, which kind of pinches it under the hood to the tray. So I don't really like that as much. I'd rather have it up here, but I don't like the fitment as much. It fits really snug and nice right here. Cords go into the seat, as you see, and plugs in back here. So I guess without further delay, let's get this guy off and take a look at this. But you can see here, nice layout, everything kind of went to the back, like I say, because this front tray may be used for a battery. So I've got Velcro here, Velcro on the sides, and then everything else tucked really low there. So not a lot to this install. The BEC was the only thing that gave me a little bit of thought on how to get that in there. And this battery access cable was another piece of the puzzle. So like I say, the battery can ride right here, which puts the plug pretty far back so it could tuck up. But if I want to ride it up here, I need to have slack to be able to get this to about that point under the seat. And also just to pull this down to be able to plug it in and out in the wheel well in the rear. So all those little considerations there. So it made it a little long install, kind of trial and error, testing some things, putting the cage on and off. But you can see there, everything sits nice and low. So it sits under the seats, and nothing is really lower than these shock towers besides the seats. So plenty of clearance there. Plenty of kind of space left over actually on the sliders. But all in all, nice clean layout. So let me just plop this in here to kind of show you, but that's kind of where it will sit after it's fished in. So you can see that reaches just fine, and then it can potentially lay on its side, kind of tucked here, which would pinch it under the hood, but you can see, you know, if it flops forward, it's gonna hit that motor. So, you know, if this was not as long, it might tuck in there just perfectly. I did kind of look at this hard park, little 200 as well, but it is taller in both dimensions than that front shock tower, as you can see. So I don't think that's gonna pinch under there. This could, of course, ride here just fine, but you know, we got a 250, a little bit more juice, a little bit more time. So I think that's gonna work just fine. So I think the next thing, I'll get the cage bolted on here, and then I'll show you kind of how I'm gonna put that battery in, and then we'll do a little test. Well, before we get this cage on, I figure I'll talk about the suspension tuning I did really quickly. So the first thing I noticed when I was getting into the electronics install was this front tray. And you saw I modified that guy for drive shaft clearance, so I could get all the way down full compression with these front shocks. That drive shaft is basically straight. We're getting so low. So it was just some clearance issues there. No problem getting that dremeled out. So you can see there, worked perfectly. Then the next thing was looking at ride height. So you can see I ended up using little guy's kind of medium limiter strap they include with this front kit. So I went from the front over and then to 2 pieces of hardware that I put in that shock tower brace. And man, I can't say enough about these shock towers and braces. Having all those screw holes, you can move them forward and backwards. I just love that modular design. Makes it super easy to set up and tune. So once I got that front ride height where I wanted it, I started looking at the rear, and again, implemented these shock towers. So I found a point here that gave me the right tension for the right amount of ride height. I found that top and bottom of the shock was just slamming the rear, which I didn't want because the front is not slammed. So we've got a nice even ride height here, a little bit of tuning, and just super happy with it. Just cannot say enough about this little guy comp frame chassis design. The more I work with it, the more I'm enjoying this build. But with that said, why don't we move on and actually get this cage on. Okay, the moment of truth. We're gonna see if I can get this battery in here. So one note here, this thing is so long wheelbase wise, I had to actually lengthen this stand. So it's nice, it's got a little bit of adjustability in it, and then you've just got set screws on that bar. So I was able to lengthen it a little bit to get this to cradle in. So the idea, and this will be tough to do on camera, is to kind of feed both wires in. And it's such a narrow opening, it's just wide enough basically for the battery. Get these guys, tell you what, it's a little bit easier off camera. Let me bend them. So get them both in. Coming up, you can kind of get a hold. What I want to do is get this JST started under the seat. Get that going in the right direction. And then you can start to kind of fish this up. And start to come on through there. Let's see if this JST is starting to come out the back. I don't think I got it poked through. So flatten the wire a little. And this Velcro is fighting you a little bit the whole way. So then I'm going to bring this balance back and just sandwich it between the transmission and the battery. So then you got to get it off the Velcro up and then seated here. So there we go. Not too hard, a little bit of a struggle there. Took me about a minute and a half. So there's my lead coming out there. So with this back tire, it's still going to be a little struggle plugging in and out. Luckily I've got some tweezers, so I'll grab the lead so I can get some slack and see if we can make this connection happen. We should get instant power to the receiver, and we do. So now I want to feed this back up in here. Get that cable out of the way a little. It's like, make sure you bring your tweezers out on the trail. Jeez. So a tight fit, so that's in there. And then one thing I set up here on this receiver is the on-off. Super easy to get to right there. Let's see if I can't get this battery cable back in here a little more. There we go. Tucked up a little bit better. There we go. All right, so I've already got the steering adjusted, but we are kissing the links, so I did have to back it off just a hair. But it looks like we're gonna get into the shock at full twist. Just barely up at the top, you can kind of see that. Look at that steering though, that is awesome. So we should have a little overdrive, and it feels like we do on this flat surface, getting a little wind up here. But let's see if I can get my throttle to not be so touchy here. So nice creep here with that Rockwolf ESC. Nice slow reverse, not too jumpy. So let's get this guy on the stand. I'm gonna tape the tires. We'll check out the overdrive. Okay, quick overdrive test. So these Super 8s come with 212 gears installed in the front axles. So let's check this out. We got 1, 2, 3, we should be getting close. Looks like 4, maybe a little more than 4, so that looks like that is all working. Let's see if we're gonna hit these links. Yeah. That one's backed off a little better. But man, we could definitely go further on the steering. It's definitely the links that are the stop point. But we are pretty close to actually hitting that front diff. I can turn this around with the steering link so you can see it there. So we get in pretty dang close. But I do have it backed off, so we are not touching. We do have a little bit of room to go there, but then get much better than that, maybe a couple degrees. But pretty happy, definitely better than the stock Super 8 CVDs that come with these axles. So I think that is all testing out really well, and this motor, man, is just super smooth. Nice slow creep, good throttle response. I think this is gonna be great on 3S. I was very happy that I could actually fit that battery in and be able to get it in and out to charge it. And you know, just from keeping to have a battery live in a vehicle, that's just something I don't really want to do necessarily. And it takes away being able to share that battery between rigs. So I think ultimately it's gonna work out much better. But man, just super happy with it right now. All right, as you saw, I decided to go ahead to get this guy on the scales and see where we sat, and wasn't super happy with the weight bias. Not bad, but 54 front, 46 rear is where it's set with the battery in there. So went back to the drawing board with some weight tuning. So I dug these guys out. I had the heavier kind of deep front face Dubro option, and you can see I started sanding those because they weren't fitting, thinking the hex was too large to drop in these little guy wheels. And then it dawned on me, they're not gonna work because of the back face of these wheel hubs. You can see that kind of star pattern around the hardware heads. So it's fairly wide. That was conflicting with this kind of forward chamfer that faces the back edge of the wheel. So I've dug out a set of these that are a little lighter, but they're the flat face. And these ended up having a little bit of an extension. They're not set up for the barrel nut, but they do push this out probably 2 millimeters versus the 1. So that's great. We're further from the links, and it's now getting the tire out of the shock, I think at full twist. So that's good. And then I took the +1s off the front, put those on the rear for a little bit of equalization on that track width. So +2 on the front, each side, +1 on the rear. But that gave 1% more bias to the front. So we are now 55, 45. So that's not bad at all, especially for the length of this guy. But not a lot of brass on this, just the diff covers, the wheel rings, and now the weights, the hex weights, I guess the knuckles as well, but those are pretty lightweight little knuckles. So not a super brassy build by any means, but definitely a lot of metal with all this aluminum. But very happy so far, so happy that in fact, I think we're gonna dive into another set of wheels and tires. Look at this mess. So I've got no idea of the combination of anything here, but I've got 2 wheels that I think are gonna work no matter what color I do for the LEXAN body. They're definitely gonna work with the silver. I've got these black Shift RC Vision Manx wheels, really nice looking, and then I've got some original little guy polished gunmetal. So I don't know that they make this colorway anymore. I think all of theirs are matte now, but really nice. They've got the white Lgrp logo. These have the Vision logo in white, but really nice looking wheels. Similar hub setup to the little guy, similar offset, but these guys come with a little like 1 millimeter shim. So you can put that between the wheel and the hub as you assemble that hub on there, get yourself a little more offset. So that'll be handy, especially in the front, because we're just fighting those links with the steering. And of course, I've got the brass rings to get those equally weighted, just like these guys. And then these already have brass rings, of course. So that should set up tuning-wise, everything very equal. And then wheel or tire-wise, excuse me, Only got one set of these left, obviously, and I've got 2 tires out here. So not sure what I'm gonna do as far as inserts and foams, but I've got some nice, big, meaty tires here. So I've got the Scorpios from J Concepts, some 63s in their green compound, feel really nice, kind of a hybrid AT/MT. And then I've got these nasty Bogger kind of knockoffs. These are Hobby Soul, and these may be 64s, these Hobby Souls. They're a little bit taller, definitely a little wider. So some meaty tires here, but I figured these are gonna fit right in the range of this build with the large little guy tires. So on hand as well, I've got these inserts that are printed from CCXRC, these pine trees. So these are sized basically for the Scrambler, which is I think around a 60. And so these are OD at 53 millimeters. So they may be a little bit small, but they're made for a trio wheel, which is a little bigger diameter. So I think they will fit these wheels potentially. So that could be an option. Of course, we got stock foams. I've got Crawler Innovation foams as well. So I think I'm gonna just play with some combos, mount up. I'm not even sure which tire is gonna go on which wheel. So we'll come back, see what I ended up with, see if it's any good. Quick overview of the size here. So here's the big boy, it's the widest, but its foam is actually smaller than that J Concepts, which is odd. So this is the J Concepts, it's wider and taller. So just looking at the width of this guy, I think I'm gonna put the wider Injora plastic inserts. And these pine trees do fit both sets of wheels. So both of these wheels are a little oversized, kind of like trials. But this pine tree is almost the exact size of the stock foam here in that big tire. It's a little narrower. So I think I'm gonna try the small one in the J Concept since it is a smaller tire, not as wide. And the yellow and green, I'll try in these guys and see. This is a super sticky rubber. I got both of these washed up. So both of them are nice and pliable, but this is not sticky at all. And this is just gummy, like sticking to my hands. You can hear it, where this really doesn't stick. It kind of pops right back out, but they both are very pliable. This has a really nice, aggressive tread design. So excited to see kind of how these will feel once we get them set up and on a wheel. So I'm gonna get to it. Well, a little bit of progress, a little bit of discovery, and I'm a little bummed out. Not super happy with any of the setups. This is a really nice setup here. I am super happy with, but it actually will not fit on the hex weight. So if we look at the way this wheel is set up, it's got the hardware around the inside of the ring. So this guy actually sits on it. So it just barely clears it with that millimeter hub extension, pushing that hub out, but that's actually thickening the hub. So there's just barely any axle stub sticking out of this wheel. So even though this clears, I'm not gonna be able to use this wheel because I don't have enough bite to get a wheel nut on there. So if I took out the spacer, it would drop this hub down deeper, and then this would actually bottom out on all the hardware before it would seat. So there's really no option with these guys. So if I want to keep these for the weight bias, then I'm not going to be using these Vision wheels. So these are out, but they feel really good with those Injora inserts. Those guys fill them out just perfectly on this height and width of this tire. They look meaty. So I'm going to leave the inserts, but can't use the wheel. This wheel tire combo looks really good, but the pine trees in there may be a little narrow. I've got quite a bit of tire slippage. The actual insert doesn't move because it's the same width as the wheel, but the tire has some. It feels really good as far as compliance, maybe a little too good, being that it's so much shorter diameter, I guess, than this one, but I mean, really not bad. So, I mean, that could work. I don't know, I'm gonna debate that a little more as I search for an alternate black wheel, which I've got these little guy black Cyclones. So these are a little bit newer. These are the matte black finish. And these have an updated hub. So they have a round hub rather than the kind of original star-shaped hub. So a little bit maybe smaller diameter to deal with as far as that, but a nice clear back face because there's no hardware. It actually is the hub that clamps the wheel. So I think these may be a good option. Otherwise, I've got some matte black V2 double stars from Maz Designs, so those could be an option. But definitely know that little guy wheels will work. So this may be an all little guy wheel build, which, you know, maybe that is appropriate since it is a full little guy kit. But anyways, gonna keep on mounting, see what else I come up with. First set of alternates are locked in, so it doesn't look like much has changed, but I did a little combination tweaking here, deciding that those pine trees were just ultimately a bit too narrow, bit too short as far as diameter. So I swapped back in the J-Concept stock foams, and as you can see, they really widen these tires out nicely on these narrow little guy wheels. Just looks incredible, just super mean. And I'm loving the coloration of these gunmetal wheels being polished. You can see as I get more acute here of an angle, they go really dark. They start reflecting the black of the tire. They just look super killer. They feel really good with these stock foams. I'd probably rather have inserts, but didn't have any more on hand besides that one extra set. So there's gonna be an odd man out, and the Scorpios were it, but I think these look great. You get them up in the light, they're really kind of a light gunmetal. You start seeing some nice variation and reflection. So I think it's just a nice, almost color shift type of wheel, but it's not. But just overall, super happy with the look. No problem with any clearances, of course. Just a perfect size for this. And the front being just spaced out a little bit more, probably 2 millimeters up here each side. It's just perfect. So these guys are gonna ride quite nice. And if you like the look of these, I got a surprise for you. I think you're gonna like the look of the next ones even more. They are a little bit bigger, a little bit badder, and a lot meaner looking. So without any further delay, let's take a look at the second set. Alternate set number 2. And as promised, they are bigger, badder, and meaner. If these tires aren't aggressive, I don't know what are. But you can see I ended up going with the matte black Cyclones, or they may call them the satin finish, but they've got a little sheen to them. Just really nice look though, and man, with the black cage on that bare metal, man, that's a good combo. Just full black out there on the wheel tire. Definitely looks good. Definitely the meanest of all 3 for sure. So I think I'm gonna be right at my limit. I'll have to check my steering, but these are really pushing it as far as clearances. The back is still just perfect right there at the body cut. But the front, of course, it's a little wider, a little knobbier here, so that's gonna affect maybe getting into that link just a little sooner. But overall, man, just awesome looking tread pattern. They feel really good with those inserts. I think that's a good move to use the nice inserts with probably the lesser compound of the 2. I think the J-Concepts on their own are gonna be just incredible. They're a really good sticky compound and a nice feeling foam. So these, you know, give them a little more help. And I think, man, they feel like they're gonna do really well, especially being so knobby. But they definitely look good, that's for sure. Just can't beat the black on black. Looks really good against the bare metal. Just super sick. So anyways, I think that is gonna do it for Wheels and Tires. Got 3 solid sets, 3 pretty basic colors, but man, they all work really well against this bare metal. Okay, so not a lot left to this build. Really just a few parts here, but quite a bit of work to go. So we've got the hinge rear bumper sliders, and then we've got the kind of unicorn billet mount that'll go up through the hood. So let's take a quick look at this body. So upon further inspection, you can see this side is trimmed pretty sloppily. It's basically got about 1 millimeter to go all the way around this side. And then if you look at this side, it is trimmed perfectly, pretty much. There's a little bit of slop right there, but it's almost like the body got tilted and it didn't get cut as much on this side, because it's like that's where it starts on the front and rear. Basically in the center, you start to get more slop over here. So it's going to take a little cleanup on that, and of course going to have to fit it to the cage to pop the hole. Got to center up that bumper and pop these holes to mount that guy. So a little bit of work there, and then of course masking and painting, and that is all after I settle on some colorways for this guy and figure out a design. So I think for now we're not going to go any further, but let's go ahead and do a little test fit here. I'm gonna go ahead and pop the hood off, because this will come off for the kind of unicorn mount to sit on there. So that will screw in right there. And the idea is that I guess you take this mount on and off if you want to run just the cage with the hood. And the same here, you would have to take these guys on and off. I guess you could leave them on there, but they're just kind of wagging in the wind. And what's odd is they tell you to use these little micro 1.2 threaded screws to attach these, I guess, on top of the panel. So you're not going to get much bite out of these. I wouldn't trust these from just snapping off. I don't know, maybe they have a good hold, but it doesn't seem like they would. So it might be a good idea to put 1.4s in here, just normal hardware, maybe something longer, like open up those cage holes just to get a nice secure mount. But of course these will widen it out too, which is nice and tucked because it is that cage. So there are a few changes that will happen, and of course we'll have the hinge attached at the back. But this is kind of what you're looking at here. Let me zoom out a little bit. And it looks pretty sweet. It looks freaking awesome right now because you can see the whole cage underneath. And that's my only quandary, is I love the body, but man, it looks sweet with just running the cage. So actually it looks really good without even a hood on there. You can see this whole shift servo. Man, that looks really nice. So I don't know, I'm kind of up in the air on how I want to go forward with this. I was thinking potentially a little more paint work on the body, or on the cage panels, I guess, once I get the body painted up and those colors chosen. Let's see if I can get this snapped on there. Not bad at all. That's much easier than the Ripper Kit hood. But I think for now, we're going to go ahead and close this guy out. Who's ready for a little tabletop action here. Figured no better time than when we've got some wheels and tires on this guy. Actually give it a little test. And you can see I had to increase the height of a few things here, just to make this a little more challenging for this guy. Which I still don't think it'll be much of a challenge. Look at that torque, just rearranging the course a little bit. Nice flex. Nice control with those limit straps, keeping everything nice and low. Look at that, very nice. Coming back at it, I'm gonna kind of swing wide, so I can get that bumper up over. Just take kind of a steeper climb here. Nice. And move this camera back. Right on up. No problem with those knobby tires. Take it at one more different angle here on the steeper face. Maybe a little bit too steep for the length of this chassis, but we'll watch it. Attempt it anyways. Well, the tires have grip. Look at that. Doing a little standy. A little bit of flex. A little bit more flex. Nice. Time for a little RTI flex here. So I put it up on some blocks to make it somewhat of a challenge here. Get to the top. Looks like that back tire is still on the ground and we are at the peak here. So definitely got some room to grow on this guy. Make sure I stay on it. But wow, cannot complain. I think that is just a beast right there. Plenty of flex, insane steering. Cleared out a little room here. Maybe we can get a little side shot approach. Trouble's gonna be getting this bumper over. There we go. Up and over. It's probably the biggest negative of this kit is the overhang of that front bumper. Let's see if we can get some grip with these tires. There we go. A little more juice. There it is. Up and over. Well, you knew we couldn't end this without one last tire swap and a little flex out here. And speaking of tires, look how much wider these guys are than the black labels. So we almost have a full another black label tire height, almost, maybe 3/4 of one here. So some big beefy guys here, and the look is just fantastic. Just loving that all kind of black on black look. And of course these bronze ghosts are just fantastic. Really like the ghost wheel design. And then these guys as well are just super classic. And happy to have one of these original polished kind of gunmetal sets that they don't make anymore. I think those look really good. So let me get these guys out of the way and we'll just take one final look at this bad boy. But man, I am just super impressed with this little guy kit. Just the fit and finish and just the whole design of the comp frame. It's just a super fun building experience. It's just set up so well for exactly what you want to do to get the most out of these rigs. So I am just really, really impressed with it. Is it worth the cost? That's up to you. I really enjoy building these things. You know, if you really comp with them, maybe it is worth it. If you really like building them, I don't know. They are, you know, up there in price, but I will say there is value in that price for sure. Just high quality parts and pieces here. So unfortunately, we're not gonna finalize this guy fully, but I think this is kind of the finalized buggy version, you know, minus maybe a few paint touches. And I gotta say, I'm super happy with it. And you know, after fitting up that LEXAN body and just looking at this cage and panel set so long, I'm really undecided if I wanna cover it up. And what I did find on Little Guy's site, they make a conversion kit for the chassis, or the comp frame, I guess, to mount just the R-Factor body. So it gives you wider sliders that come out and support the body and catch it, so you don't have to run these little extensions that would screw on here. So gives you a nose piece to catch the front because you won't have the cage and panels. So that could be an option to get more of a lightweight, just body, LEXAN body version of this. You know, why have the cage under there if you're gonna cover it up? It's kind of my thought. But anyways, not sure how I'm gonna proceed on this. May end up next build with two of these guys sitting next to each other, kind of matching. I don't know, we'll see. But hope you enjoyed the build process thus far. The stage 2 went swimmingly compared to stage 1. So very happy with that. A lot of fun stuff here. Hope this helped you if you're diving into this build. I think the biggest hurdle on this guy is battery placement and electronics and access. And I think that was solved very nicely, at least in my opinion, on this guy. So as always, I want to thank you for coming along on the build process. Hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, thanks for watching.